Amazon FBA private label versus arbitrage versus wholesale versus A2A. Let's analyze all of the bloody models. I'll tell you my experience with all of them and my personal opinions. If you don't know me already, my name's Adam. I've been doing Amazon FBA for 6 years now. I started off doing wholesale and arbitrage all the way to the point now, mainly doing the private label strategy, doing about £3.3 million per year. And just last month, we did over £400,000 in one single month, which is absolutely crazy. Okay, so I mean, without further ado, I say that just not to flex really, but just to show you social proof, so you know who you're speaking to and you know who to bloody listen to, not speaking to, right? So, I mean, let's dive straight into it, right? First of all, let's go with arbitrage, right? Now, arbitrage is a funny one, right? Because arbitrage is basically you, either online or retail arbitrage, you going to supermarkets, you going to online stores or physical stores, right? And you're buying products which are perhaps in the discounted section, getting one-time deals, clearance sections and things like this, mainly just one-off deals or 2-for-1 offers and things like this, things which are ultimately just short-lived and therefore one-off, one-time deals realistically, right? Now, I'm going to get onto pros on all of them to begin with. Like, when I'm going to go to pros and then I'll go to cons and then go to wholesale, pros to cons, because like, let's talk about the good stuff first, because we're not negative people. So the first one is like, a pro/advantage for arbitrage is that it is low barrier to entry, okay? You can start with a very, very small amount of capital, which is cool, right? If you want to get started tomorrow, you can, okay? However, I'm going to get onto a little bit later why that can kind of shoot you in the foot a little bit. You can get fast cash flow from that. Obviously, if it's low barrier to entry, you can start tomorrow, which basically means you can start relatively quickly as well. And in turn, you can start making money relatively quickly too. And not only that, you don't really have to do much face-to-face. It doesn't really require any as such like skills, really. Maybe just some mathematics skills to work out your profits, but like you don't have to have any interpersonal skills, any negotiation skills, professionalism, nothing. You don't have to dress nice. Like all of it is just you putting the work in and just going to find the products really. Okay, so there are some pros of it. Like I guess as well, I was going to say easy to test, but I don't think that's a pro really. So let's get on to some disadvantages of arbitrage, okay? Now, again, I just had it in a advantage. Now, it depends where you're sort of at on the scale, but like because it's low barrier to entry can also be a disadvantage for you as well, because the fact that it's low barrier to entry means it can be super competitive. It's one of the most competitive, it's the most competitive and saturated method on Amazon without a shadow of a doubt, okay? Another thing is, it's not sustainable long term. It's not something that you can do. Although you can, I know people which have scaled it into the millions, but like realistically, it's not a scalable business as such, because let's be honest, right? You don't own anything. You're going onto online stores, buying freaking Fairy Liquid or whatever from an online store. Like, you don't own Fairy Liquid and you're buying it from a retailer that's meant to sell it directly to the consumer anyway. Like, who's going to buy your business? Nobody. Your business has a capital value of absolute zero, which is a huge disadvantage, especially for the long term and what your long term goals are. Like, if your long term goals are you want to become like even if it's basic, like you want to just become a millionaire or something like this. Like, a lot of people become that millionaire by perhaps selling their business and then scaling the capital they get and putting it into property and stuff like that. Like, that's how you do things long term as such, but like you just can't do that with arbitrage. Sure, you can get the cash flow, but that's about it. Another thing is like the supply is very inconsistent because you're getting one-off deals, right? So you may find a deal, oh, it's great, cool, buy it with 50 units or whatever, you want to go and get that back again. Most of the time, that's not the case, right? You won't be able to get it again. And finally, from personal experience and not personal experience, but people I speak to people on a daily basis doing wholesale and arbitrage specifically. And you know what? The biggest common thing that I see is problems. Like, they have the most problems out of everyone, even as far as account risk and account deactivations. The most common person I see that get their account deactivated are people which do arbitrage. Literally, hands down, without a shadow of a doubt, right? Because a lot of the stuff is kind of in policy, to be fair, but some of it is on edge and it's borderline, right? Which isn't ideal, because you get things like authenticity complaints, like you always get IP complaints from brands and all that stuff. You just don't get any of that with a couple of the other strategies. So all in all, that's the pros and cons with arbitrage. Now let's get on to a little bit of the wholesale side of things. Now, Honestly, to be real with you, wholesale and arbitrage have similar pros and cons, but there are some slight differences, right? Now, wholesale is basically you buying. So the arbitrage, you're going into the supermarkets, you're buying branded goods, right? You're trying to buy as bulk as you can, but you can't quite get as much bulk as you can. Wholesale, on the other hand, you're still selling branded products, but you're going to either a wholesaler / distributor, or maybe even the brand directly, and getting the same branded product from them, but just in larger volumes. Perhaps you're ordering 500 units, or you're ordering a pallet, or some people maybe even order containers and stuff at large scale, right? So that is wholesale in a nutshell, and again, you're just reselling online. So you can probably see and think now, oh yeah, it's probably going to have similar pros and cons. However, there are some key differences, right? A huge advantage, like personally, like I started out with wholesale mainly, and I did it for 2.5 / 3 years, so I know it inside and out. So a huge advantage is like the supply is significantly better. You can get that product and replenish it month in, month out without a problem, which is super cool. More stable supply, right? Now, a couple of other things. It's scalable. It can be scalable if you have the right systems and the right processes and the right team. And it also is lower risk than arbitrage. And there's going to be also a barrier to entry section here. A pro is it's a little bit higher barrier to entry than arbitrage, which means the competition is a little less. Okay. However, wholesale is still, in my opinion, I don't want to get onto the cons right now because I'm not finished with the pros or such the advantages, but like it can be super competitive as well, right? But one of the biggest advantages which I found when I was doing it, like you can build real relationships, real good relationships with suppliers and manufacturers, brands directly, right? This is such a huge advantage, right? Because yes, it does require some interpersonal skills and some negotiation and dealing with people and stuff like this. But when you're building them relationships, that sets you apart and that reduces the competition that you actually have when you're selling online, right? Because if you've got a really good relationship with a wholesale or brand or whatever, they're going to prioritize you, give you better pricing, or send products out to you instead of another person, right? Or prioritize a stock over somebody else. Okay, this is huge, right? And it can set you apart from the rest. Now, don't get me wrong, we're going to get onto the cons now as well. Like, yes, you don't own anything. Again, that's a big disadvantage. And again, your business is worth £0 as well, really. However, it can be worth something. Okay, it can be worth something. It will be small, but it can be worth something if you've got really good relationships and maybe even gone as far as getting things like exclusive relationships with brands. So perhaps if you've got an exclusive relationship, it basically just means the brand will only sell to you and nobody else on the Amazon platform, and you get to make 100% of the sales, which is cool, absolutely amazing. But generally speaking, most people with wholesale business, they won't either have this relationships or their business will still be worth just pretty much zero, right? Okay. I'm kind of getting a bit out of breath, to be honest. I haven't got any of this coffee left. Tiny bit. Okay, cool. So, a couple of the disadvantages now. Like, it's similar to arbitrage, right? It's super competitive. Super competitive, first of all. Second of all, okay, the margins are pretty damn low. Same with arbitrage as well. In my opinion, I think wholesale is actually lower margins than arbitrage. However, the consistency is there, for sure. You're just competing on price on both of them, like the buy box, the price wars, and all of that stuff, which is not ideal. You also don't have any control, so the brand or supplier could increase the prices in turn reducing your margin once again and stuff as well, which isn't ideal. The only other disadvantage is, and it could be an advantage as well, but like you do need more capital to start wholesale. Like you probably want to be entering wholesale with at least like $3,000 or something like this, approximately. Because, some of the minimum orders from brands or suppliers can be like $3,000, $4,000, $10,000 and stuff like this. That, I was speaking to a manufacturer a while ago now because I've kind of stopped doing it a little bit, but one had a £50,000 per month minimum order, minimum spend. So, it just depends who you're dealing with, right? So it can need higher upfront costs and stuff. But again, like I said, you probably found out that it's a little bit similar. Now let's go on to private label, okay? This is going to be private label, right? Now, private label is you basically building your own brand, your own product, which you own and you control. You own the intellectual property before and you sell it on Amazon. For example, if I create this electrolyte brand, right? I create this electrolyte brand, let's say, and I got it made out in China, Europe, wherever it may be. And this is my packaging, I've got it all designed, this is my logo and stuff, and I send it into Amazon and I start selling it on Amazon and start marketing it myself. That's private label, Okay, now let's get into the advantages and not beat around the bush. Private label is the highest possible profit margins that you will ever get. 100%, without a doubt, right? And no one can tell you otherwise. 100%. Okay, you control everything, right? All the way far as the supply chain and getting it manufactured. You choose how much basically the product costs, because by choosing the product itself, if something costs £2 to make, right, and you're going to be selling it for $9.99, cool. But if something costs you £5 and you want to sell it for $9.99, you can decide, no, I'm not going to go ahead with that. I'm going to look for other manufacturers, or I'm going to cut that product alone, right? I'm going to look for a better product to sell, which is going to make me more money, more margin, or I'm going to look for a new manufacturer to try and shave them costs down even more, for example. Okay, very, very good. One of the biggest advantages ever. And the next one, you probably just see that it's all the advantages of private label are just combating the cons of all the other strategies, right? You have more control. Like, you control everything on private label. Like I just said, you control the listing, you control the price that you sell at. If you want to sell at $29.99 and you can justify it, you can, if you do it in the right way, which we can help you with and show you how to do. You control the branding, you control the way you market it, you control everything, all of which will help you justify the price you sell it for, okay? So if you sold things and marketed things in a different way, where everyone's selling it for $19.99, you could sell it for $29.99 if you did things correctly, okay? Next thing is you're building a real brand asset. So you know how people buy property and they have an asset, and this is just like an asset, like same thing with a brand. You're building a brand from scratch, costs you significantly less money than a property ever would, and you're building that up and it's becoming worth something. It's a real asset, and a real asset which you can sell. You have exit potential when you're starting private label. Exit potential, right? Let's take me for example, right? I was selling on Amazon for 6 years. I'm selling on Amazon for 6 years now, and I started off doing wholesale. About 2.5, 3 years in, I realized my business was worth zero. So about 3.5 years ago, my business was worth nothing, £0. Now in 3.5 years, my business is now worth £1 million. I can sell my business for £1 million cash, straight up. How nuts, how crazy is that in just 3.5 years, right? Think about what property could give you that, for example. Like, it couldn't. I don't really think it could, okay? And another big advantage is the competition is significantly less, once again, doing private label, because not many people want to do it, first of all, because they think it's hard. Now, let me tell you this, from personal experience as well, when you get the right framework, the right systems, and you've done it 1 or 2 times, it's literally just as hard as wholesale. Literally, wholesale and private label are just as easy or just as hard as each other. But the other one makes significantly more money, and you're building an asset. You know, with anything, right, it just takes a little bit of time to learn. All you need to do is take that time to actually put the work in and learn. Now, I'm not going to just be like, oh, there's only pros to private label. I've got some cons here. Of course, there's pros and cons to absolutely everything. And you're going to make your own informed decision on what's best for you, obviously. Cons, I've written some down in front of me. Disadvantages. It does have a high upfront investment, right? So I always typically tell people, and I do a TikTok live 3 times a week as well, like, how much you need for private label is the most common question I get asked, and you need about 5K or more at a bare minimum to start private label. And that's not just, like, people get have a misconception that, oh, you need 5K for your inventory, isn't that risky? Nah. First of all, it's not risky. Second of all, it's not just for inventory. You got things like maybe spending $2,000 on inventory. You got to spend money on getting your branding done, your packaging designed. You got to think about spending money on ads. You got to think about graphic design and all that stuff. And then when your product starts selling, you need capital to then buy more stock as well, because your money doesn't come to you instantly from Amazon, does it? Next, risk of product failure as well. And again, this comes down to you not having the right framework. People are always scared that they're going to be sat on a load of stock. Now, honestly, worst case scenario now with myself, if I ever have a failed product launch, and I've launched over 200 products, right, in the past 3 years, and I've failed maybe 2 or 3 times now, because I've just got the right system, the right framework, and it's foolproof, and it just works most of the time. But the reality is, if you ever have something which doesn't go particularly wrong, it's like wholesale or arbitrage. You can slash the price down to break even because you have such good margins. Like, the price when you slash it down to break even is going to be an absolutely ridiculously insane price, and people will just start buying it you'll make no money on it, but you'll get your money back, right? Which is very, very important. A couple of other things, it does require a little bit more learning. You need to think about PPC ads, you need to think a little bit about copywriting, you need to think a little bit about like keyword research and stuff, all of which you don't really need when you're doing wholesale or arbitrage. But again, do you want to put the work in to make more? Like, do you want to put 50% extra work in to make 400 to 500% more money? Because that's probably an accurate ratio. And one final thing is, of course, this is pretty natural, pretty obvious, I'm pretty sure, but it will take you longer to make profit to begin with. I say, for sure. Now, with wholesale, with arbitrage, you can make money in as little as 1 to 2 weeks. To be fair, 1 to 2 weeks. Private label, you can make money within a month for sure, but like, if we're being realistic, 2 to 3 months, okay? Now, that being said, like I said, the returns are significantly higher. Of course, significantly higher, and that makes up for it. However, when you start to get more consistent products, more consistent supply, more consistent shipments, and start making more sales more consistently, it's like the compound effect, right? Private labels like this, and then it will just go like that, right? Wholesale and arbitrage is just going to go like that. Maybe it goes steadily up, and then it will just plateau, and then it will come down maybe as well. So yeah. They're the disadvantages, advantages of all of them. I'm not going to tell you what you're going to do. Like, personally, if it was me back in the day now, if I was starting again from zero, if I had 5K or more, I would start with private label. If I didn't have 5K, I'd perhaps try and do like TikTok shop affiliate or something like that, because I think that's a lot easier to make money and you don't have to buy stock or anything like that. So hopefully this video has been useful. Like I said, I've been doing private label now for quite a while. I've got a solid framework. So if you guys want to learn anything to do with private label directly from me on a one-to-one basis or a group basis, make sure you click the link down below, the description, book in a call directly with me, or send me a message on Instagram if you're interested. But ultimately, look forward to seeing you either on the call or see you on the next video. But without further ado, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.